I just wanted to ask if you could give a current update on the current situation where you are on the ground.
I'm in Kiev. Basically, the point right now in Kiev is preparing the defenses, getting everything in order to try and meet whatever Russian column is there waiting to attack. The whole world was discussing this column, so the point is to prepare for that. Again, Kiev is a city of millions, so it is not so easy to take it over no matter how long of a column you have entering the city. So we'll fight with all we have, and getting all that we can get our hands on is the job now. There's a battle happening in the outskirts of town, especially in the supply lines we have to the west. I've been there for the last couple of days. I think I'll go there today if time allows as well. But basically the point right now of the battle is it's on the outskirts of Kiev. We have pushed everything they try to send into Kiev time and time again.
And we've seen, shocking images of MPs like yourself having to patrol the streets essentially with automatic weapons, which is something that we just aren't used to seeing at all. It's very shocking. Did you ever imagine that when you became an MP, the youngest MP in Ukraine, that you would one day have to patrol the streets with a gun, that this would ever happen to your country?
Well, first, patrolling is not so much our job in general. MPs have been joining various parts of the Ukrainian military and our armed forces and our law enforcement agencies to try and take their part in defense in any capacity they can. They can basically. So patrolling the streets is beside the point. The reason why it was so much captured because basically the central police station of Kiev, where there was plenty of weapons distributed to all the citizens who wanted to take part in the fight, is right near the hotel where our journalists live. And that's why essentially they were photographing myself and my colleagues there with those weapons. But the point is, after that point, we went on to different battle stations, different part of our reality to try and be more effective in different capacities. And again, I'm a rudimentary soldier at best. Getting those skills and upping those skills is part of my routine now, but I'm by no means, I can by no means boast masterly soldiers skills. I'm trying to help, for example, organize Foreign Legion right now, with various individuals there who have lots of experience and are battle hardened in conflicts all over the world. And that's basically, as far as the usefulness of many of my colleagues and myself, getting the supplies, getting the means to conduct the fight, as well as trying to take our part in the fighting, but bettering our skills as we go along, is sort of the reality right now. As far as seeing that beforehand, we had a war with Russia for 8 years in the eastern Ukrainian front line. So the idea that Russia might do something like this was not inconceivable. It didn't seem probable, but it's because the reality of our century, but still that was not inconceivable. I was I had many maxims before the Crimean annexation, but after Crimea was annexed in 2014, I very much stopped believing the fact that history has ended, and the facts that something of this or that sort is impossible to happen. The reality is everything can happen in this tumultuous world of ours. So yes, that is something that you could believe, especially the American warnings that were coming time in, day in, day out from Washington, and with all of the panic and the attention to Ukrainian border all over the world.
And you've mentioned that you've been working alongside foreign legions. We know that recently some British soldiers have travelled over to Ukraine to help. Have you seen any Brits, any
Yes.
people from the UK?
Yes, I just spoke with several yesterday, and basically after this conversation and in a meeting with the special unit of Ukrainian forces, I'll be going to try and help them get into the fight. Basically, I've been trying to organize Foreign Legion. I've reached out to my contacts in the Office of the President, understanding that this foreign affairs, national relations has been part of my portfolio for my entire life. So organizing and helping to organize Foreign Legion is part of my work right now.
And you've mentioned weapons, and specifically We know that civilians were given the opportunity to go and fight. They were given weapons. Is that still happening? So are civilians still being armed? And do you have enough weapons?
Well, the reality is it's happening less because there's more organization right now. The first days of the war, when Russians wanted to essentially take over the country, sweep the country, that's where we had to go to extreme measures to try and give everybody who wanted a chance to defend their country. And in parts of Kiev where you had Russians trying to make big incursions, we had armed just everyday civilians who wanted to go and fight. The reality is that actually helped in some parts of the border. It helped to try and push back whatever Russians were throwing at us. Because the country is up in arms. Our country is ready and willing to defend its right to an independent future, and citizens of our country feel that very strongly and are partaking in the fight, no matter how how much were they ready for it. Because again, when your whole country is attacked, every single side, in every single way, the calculation changes and everybody becomes a soldier. So the reality is, as far as weapons are concerned, everything is more structured now. There is territorial defense forces, there is the army, there is various parts of the military apparatus right now, which is essentially in full mobilization mode to try and again get everybody into the fight who wants and can fight to try and win this. And so that's why everything is ready.
And going back to weaponry, do you have enough weapons? And for instance, yourself, we've seen you on the streets with a gun. What type of gun do you have? And what type of guns are civilians being given?
Well, the reality is, as far as the weapons that are handed to civilians, it's the old Soviet storage, which is basically a lot of Kalashnikovs and handguns and Soviet handguns and this and the other. I have AKM-74 right by me, and basically the point is that AKM it's not rocket science to learn how to handle that gun, and especially when many of my parliamentary assistants right now are in the fighting and they have the skills they can try and teach to yours truly and to other people. I have a member of my team who now heads a platoon to the west of Kiev, those embattled cities near Kiev, and another assistant trying to build a defense in the south of Kiev.
And so are you always, you said it's by your side now. Are you always having to carry that gun with you?
Well, the reality is, for the last 2 weeks, we have plenty of saboteurs, infiltrators coming into Kiev. Russians are trying to sneak in through various means and to try and cause chaos in organizational lines. That's why the city is full of checkpoints, and that's why there's martial law in effect now. But the point right now, as far as the gun is concerned, it's better be safe than sorry. It's not it's a question of, again, Kiev is a town that Russians are attempting to siege, and they are doing everything possible to infiltrate our defenses, and you never know when situations might happen. I have been in gunfights in Kiev, basically about 2 kilometers away from where I sit right now, and there have been saboteurs captured basically 100 meters away from where I sit right now. So the point is, you never know.
Crazy. And are you saying,
not say that I'm a masterful with the gun. I am by no means that. I'm learning, I'm getting the knowledge. But again, in the situation that we are facing right now, with all that invasion on all the sides, with Russian airborne troops being dropped, who knows where, because the rest doesn't want to have a no-fly zone when saboteurs coming in. It's, again, situations can be overwhelming and surprising sometimes.
Well, let's focus on the no-fly zone. So obviously, your president has stressed that he would like a no-fly zone. We have, the UK, the US, etc., and NATO specifically, have argued the point that if we did put a no-fly zone in force, that it could escalate the war and we would be dragged into it. What's your personal opinion and the general opinion of other MPs?
The fact of the matter is, Russia doesn't have doesn't really win the air fight, but it has overwhelming numbers to try and control the sky and attack anywhere in Ukraine. You've seen some of those images. They basically hit residential buildings. They killed children. They killed civilians of every sort. That overwhelming numerical advantage gives them a chance to cause havoc in our lines. So the point here, the no-fly zone is a humanitarian measure that can stop Russians indiscriminately destroying civilian realities all over Ukraine. We had just this morning, we had the rocket attacks all over my country, from the towns in the west, which aren't part of the conflict at the moment, to different parts of the towns which are now besieged, or the Russians attempting to besiege. So the point here is that, again, the Russian forces are essentially using their numerical advantage in the air to attack all over my country. And to stop that from happening, we'll stop those images which come to your TVs every single day, informing you of the carnage the Russians are causing in Ukraine.
Well, we're seeing, obviously, the horrific and heartbreaking images of children being killed, men, women, just dying on the streets. Have you actually, are you seeing that as a daily occurrence, civilians being targeted? Have you physically seen civilians being targeted on the streets?
Kiev, because we have cleared out the town from Russian incursions, has been less affected by that. I've seen those images in the towns outside of Kiev, to which I traveled with humanitarian supplies and to try and reinforce the soldiers, including my team members, parliamentary team members, who are right now fighting there. The horrible scenes I've seen in Kiev is the carnage on the train stations. The reality that city of many, many millions is right now in a state of disarray, and you have a lot of people fleeing the capital of a biggest European nation, essentially causing a human disaster before our eyes.
Yeah, and how is that? There are reports of obviously civilians, because of the bombing, because of the strikes, and because you're being surrounded by most sides, there are reports of food and water shortages. Can you verify if that's true? A household running out of water and food?
Basically, I was yesterday in the town of Irpin. If you've seen the news, it's a town right outside of Kiev. Basically, it's on that western road to Kiev. The town is lacking everything. There's no electricity, there's no running water, there's no heating, and basically I was bringing there some rudimentary supplies to at least keep those people that are staying there. Again, these are elderly, these are women, these are children, at least supplied with something so they can survive through this ordeal. And the reality is Russians cause this horror not just around Kiev. The same drama goes for example, city of Mariupol, city 500,000 people on the coast, which essentially they are sieging, shelling, attacking, and destroying. And the count of the dead there is just staggering, and that's only what we can count. There are many more uncounted from what I'm getting from people that are there at the moment. The same drama with humanitarian and basic necessities goes in Kharkiv, one of the biggest cities in Ukraine, which again has been shelled relentlessly, attacked relentlessly. And again, we are here trying to see the reality of what this is and to survive through and fight through it. So yes, we are pushing back, but all these problems that you named are present. Not in Kiev right now, where I sit, but where you go basically around Ukraine, you see this.
And we're seeing as well, humanitarian access is being prevented by Russians. It's being cut off in some areas. So they're not giving.
It's worse than that. It's worse than that. We basically, in our negotiations with Russia, we can't agree on anything except for the point for the humanitarian corridors to bring civilians out of those besieged towns. And every single time we agree on them, every single time Russia shelled those convoys.
I was going to say that's what they're doing. They're still targeting, aren't they, and breaking the agreement?
Yes. Full of women, children, and everybody who's essentially most vulnerable in the situation.
And what's frustrating a lot of people, so as you know, Putin's regime uses social media, the internet, to spread disinformation. He controls the media in Russia, so they have a completely different idea or a belief of what is going on here. So we're seeing a lot of disinformation on social media, fake news claiming that Putin hasn't invaded, you know, that this is all fake. A Russian embassy the other day was taken off Twitter, had one of their posts because they claimed that there were crisis actors, people pretending to be bomb victims of their bombing. What, you know, and one of the main pieces of propaganda that Putin is pushing is that there's the history behind this invasion, and it is an illegal invasion. He claims that Ukraine belongs to Russia. In your opinion, why has this invasion started?
Putin has a firm idea about where Ukraine should be. He has said it time and time again over the decades of his rule. That is that Ukraine doesn't exist, Ukrainian nation doesn't exist, that we should be part of Russia. And basically that's what he wants to put now in effect. And the problem is he believes his own propaganda. He believed that he will sweep Ukraine and Ukrainians will cheer him on. The opposite happens. Instead of flowers, our people are shooting bullets at their troops, are coming on the streets with nothing in their hands to showcase that they want their cities, their parts of Ukraine to remain Ukrainian. And the reality, as Mr. Putin said himself, he doesn't want to leave the Ukrainian question to the future generations, was his expression. You might remember somebody else in history who said the very same thing about other nations. And the way he approached this matter. Again, this is nothing but a man who has been in power for so long. He doesn't think about the repercussions of this. He just is obsessed with the idea, and he doesn't care about the carnage he causes to realize that idea. So he is given to the fact that Ukraine should cease existing. As far as Russian lies, I mean, the beauty of the situation that we have is on the day when the invasion started, we had all of the world's press right here in Kiev, right all across the country, and they could cover and tell the story. Don't listen to Ukrainians, just listen to your own press being there, seeing this, sharing this, telling the story. And the point here is we can only tell the world or the one simple fact that our nation wants Russia to get out. Our nation wants to choose its own future. That's it. What Russia wants is to destroy the single largest state in Europe and do that by any means necessary. We're going to resist that by any means necessary, and we're going to win.
Yeah. And another claim made by Putin, and this is something that he keeps hammering home, and it's obviously a complete fantasy, a lie. He keeps saying that he wants to denazify Ukraine. You have a Jewish president. Apparently, you know, to call him a Nazi is insanity. But is there, you know, we know in every single country there are neo-Nazi groups. Even in Russia, even in the UK, there are sadly a small number of neo-Nazi groups. Does Ukraine have a significant problem with neo-Nazism, or is it an exaggeration by Putin?
Talk about this is to give credibility to madness of these claims. I mean, the reality, if you look at the polling before the war, before the revolution even of 2014, and you look at, for example, attitudes towards the Jewish nation all across Europe, Ukrainian anti-Semitism comes in the bottom, in the very bottom of the list. Ukrainians have a good relationship with people in Ukraine of Jewish descent, of Jewish origins. And the evidence for that is the fact that Ukraine elected a Jewish Ukrainian, a Russian-speaking Jewish Ukrainian as the president of Ukraine. And for Putin to choose a moment like this to attack Ukraine and to call a Russian-speaking Jewish Ukrainian, neo-Nazi or Nazi, this, it just, I mean, the point is, there's a Freudian slip by a man who basically attacked, I mean, he bombed the very site where the infamous, terrible story of Babin Yar, so destruction of the Jews of Kiev by Nazis happened. He bombed that very place. He attacked Kiev. He shelled Kiev the first day, exactly the hour where Nazis attacked Kiev back in 1941. So the point here is, he basically is speaking about Nazis so much because he knows, deep down, he knows that he is actually following the pattern right now of the way the Nazis were treating all the countries around them, trying to destroy them, trying to deny their right to exist, trying to conquer that whole sphere that they saw as theirs. Putin sees the same story happening here. But again, the world sees the reality right now, and he is not going to get away with it in one way or the other.
And do you think that social media, platforms like Twitter and Facebook, because there is so much propaganda being spread online, do you think that social media companies need to take action? So, for instance, President Trump had his tweets during the election when he tweeted out disinformation, they labeled them, and eventually they took him out. They took him off of Twitter. And yet we're seeing pro-Russian accounts from the Kremlin. They're daily spreading disinformation. What do you think Twitter and Facebook need to do to stop this disinformation being spread?
It's a raging hypocrisy, basically. The reality is it's not just about it's Russia and its resources, be that Sputnik or RT, essentially are spreading madness, claims that just fly in the face of reality that everybody's seeing right now around the world. But Putin right now is tightening the grip on his state and closing it down entirely. You know, the Twitter is down in Russia, Facebook is down in Russia, Instagram is down. So Russia is clamping down on source information about the reality, what's going on in Ukraine. The world must see all the assets which are transmitting lies from Russia as that, weapons of war, information war, that it must try and fight.
And how are your family? You know, I can imagine you're completely exhausted. You're fighting day to day for your life, basically. What about your family, though? How are they? Are they safe?
My family is in the west. I'm from Western Ukraine. I'm from the city of Lviv, which you heard plenty about as far as refugees are concerned. Basically, my family is there, and my family is holding on there. So the point is, it's not. Lviv was hit by rockets, but there was no major fighting there. And as far as the reality that it's about refugees, basically, my family from different parts of Ukraine is essentially living with them, and they're trying to cope with that reality.
And do you think we've discussed no-fly zones? Do you think the UK and the US is doing enough to help Ukraine? And if not, what more should we be doing?
The word enough in general doesn't apply to fighting second biggest army in the world and the biggest country in the world. And the reality is that all these steps which the parliament in the UK was discussing in the last few days are very much welcome and needed greatly. Again, we are trying to provide weapons and means to different people in this country who are all putting up a tremendous fight, which of course the world applauds, and we appreciate that. But we need the means to fight that fight. And the whole story about Air Force, it's not just about the West is unwilling to enforce a no-fly zone. We are happy to try and destroy Russian Air Force ourselves, but we need the means to do that. And all these steps which were discussed in the UK's parliament, I've heard a bit from yesterday, that's all extremely welcome. As far as the states, United States are concerned, we have been in discussions with them on various points. I mean, I've been speaking with one congressman yesterday, for example, and it's very clear that that line of support will be getting stronger and bigger, which is music to our ears as we try to maintain our economy and our military and population, and try to push on no matter what Russians throw at us.
And there's a huge Russian convoy near Kiev that's ground to a halt. It can be seen from space. Why? Because it's obviously stationary. Why is Ukraine not targeting it before it starts moving and attacking the capital? Is it because you don't have the actual web? You know, you don't have the air planes, etc., to attack it? But I can't understand why.
That as well, but the point is that Kiev and the towns other Kiev is a city of millions, but it needs to be supplied. So the battles have been raging to try to keep those supply lines open, and that's the majority of the effort were for the last couple of days. But as far as the convoy, believe me, we do want that convoy destroyed, but the means for it is exactly what we are discussing every single day with our partners in various different forums, including this one today, and giving us that those means to try and disrupt that Russian buildup that will aim to try and siege or take or seize Kiev is ask right now. So I'm thankful that you're raising this matter, but again, this is the point of means which your countries are providing us with.
And obviously the Poland tried to organize through America to get MiGs, so quite effective planes to you. America has sadly rejected that plan. So hopefully your country can arrange to get some, planes, because that's what you need to destroy the convoy, really. What do you, if Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, was in front of you right now, what would you say to him? What would you ask?
I would thank Mr. Johnson because he was on the earliest, he led the earliest effort to try and prepare us for what your intelligence service was telling you about, the Russian invasion that was imminent. And that is extremely welcome. As far as Mr. Johnson's attitude to our country, the fact that he has taken steps to try and finally cut the Russian money supply to Britain, laundering dirty, corrupt resources through Britain, is music to my ears, because I met plenty of journalists in the UK over the years, and they all told me this story they investigated, discovered about various different channels through which Russians, Putin-related Russians, are trying to launder their money in the UK in the most public of manners. So the point here is that steps against that and showing that Russians cannot use a free ride on British institutions is a welcome sign of change. Not to mention the fact that UK is time and time again giving us forum to discuss those problems that we are facing every day, including a speech by Mr. Zelensky that he gave, referring the lessons that we learned from Britain as far as British resistance against the Nazis, against all odds after the fall of France and fall of Europe. And that gives us hope that no matter how dark our reality seem, we can still prevail and succeed. And I mean, it's very telling that a lot of people, when they're using the British in-love system, are saying "God save the Queen." So the point is that we appreciate that support and we feel that support. Not to mention that right before the invasion started, we had an alliance signed between Poland, Ukraine, and the UK. To try and showcase to the world that UK cares about the region, UK is willing to support the region, and UK is by no means out of the European discussion on the security dimension. UK is in front of it.
And, you know, finally, what do you think the outcome of this war is going to be? And what do you think lies in store for the future of Ukraine and your people?
I mean, I have plenty of things I've said over these interviews about that eventual point that we are going to. But the reality is very simple. Ukrainians are motivated here. Ukrainians are fighting for their own land. Ukrainians are willing to put whatever fight is needed of them to try and keep the Russians out and push them out. So the point here is we aren't going to give it up. We are going to push on and on and on, no matter what Russians throw at us. As far as Kiev is concerned, for example, if Russians throw that column into Kiev, it shall be destroyed. We have various means to try and get that done. But even if Russians mobilize and send millions of their conscripts into Ukraine, we're going to make Kiev their Stalingrad. We aren't going to give up this fight. On the Russian side, when you see those POWs that we are capturing en masse, these are people that don't know why they are here. They don't understand why are they fighting. Why are they fighting Ukrainians? Why are they engaged in this battle, which has taken so many already from the Russian army, Russian nation? And so for me, the point is very simple, that in this battle, there is a difference in motivation. We are a free nation wanting to retain our freedom. They are captured nation by their dictator, who is throwing them without regard for their lives or their well-being into this fight, in which they don't understand the purpose. So the point here is that Ukrainians will win this, and not just because we feel the courage to say so and that and the other. We feel this because our history is evidence to that. We had the most horrible 20th century. We had the First World War, we had the Russian Civil War, we had the collectivization, the Holodomor, genocide by hunger, we had Holocaust, we had the Second World War, we had the gulags and experiments by the Soviet Union on our people. And every single time, we got to the point in which in that horrible century, we ended up with an independent state of 50 million people. So if my great-grandfather survived Stalin, will survive Putin.
Yeah, I agree. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time, and we'll have to stay in touch. Just a message, whenever I asked people if they wanted to submit questions to ask you, everyone just passed on their best wishes. And I think Brits and people across the world, we feel quite helpless. There's not much we feel that we can do. However, you have our full support and you're an inspiration to many people. So I hope you stay safe and your family stay safe. and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Thank you for caring. Thank you for your interest.
Thanks very much. Take care.
All the best.